Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. I'm your host, King Jemison, coming to you in an absolutely wild week in Pittsburgh sports. I mean, the whiplash for Steelers fans from getting absolutely blown out on Monday night in the fourth quarter against the Texans, another playoff loss, the losing streak in the postseason extends, and then the next day, Mike Tomlin is just gone. Wow. But amid all of that, the Penguins also played a pretty crazy game of their own on Tuesday night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was not always a pretty game. In fact, I would call it pretty ugly for most of it. But it turned into a pretty dramatic ending, and the Penguins lost yet another shootout. They've fallen to 1-6 in shootouts. And listen, they picked up a much-needed point against the Lightning, who have now won an NHL best 11 games in a row. That's the longest streak for any team this season. It's tying the Lightning franchise record, which is saying something. But still, this was a game that was there for the taking for the Penguins, and yet they fall again in the shootout, and it was Arturs Silovs in net. He's now 1 for 5 and 1 in 5 in shootout games. So we're going to talk a little bit about that Lightning loss and also about some potential solutions to the shootout struggles. But first, I want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel, where tomorrow's opponent, that would be Thursday, the Philadelphia Flyers are playing the Buffalo Sabres on TNT tonight. The Flyers are plus 122 favorites at Buffalo, and that game going to be nationally televised. If you're a Penguins fan, you're hoping that it's going to be a chippy, very down-to-the-wire game that takes a lot out of the Flyers, because a similar thing happened with the Lightning on Monday. They actually had played in Philadelphia. They won handily, but it was a game with a lot of drama, at least one fight. And so, I think that sort of took some of the wind out of the Lightning sails, and they definitely did not get off to a great start in PPG Paints Arena on Tuesday. The Penguins can hope for the same thing with tonight's Flyers-Sabres matchup before the Flyers head to Pittsburgh on Thursday. So now let's get into a little bit of that Lightning game. It was a pretty light crowd, understandably, because, a lot of people were either at the Steelers game on Monday or probably were out late that night. And it felt like the action on the ice sort of reflected the sleepy atmosphere in the building. And neither team could generate or sustain any kind of momentum. Both teams took quite a few penalties in the first couple periods. And there was really not that many excellent chances for either squad. Both goalies were very good. Vasilevsky for the Lightning was superb. Silovs was really, really good in regulation and overtime as well. But it wasn't like they were having to stand on their head throughout this game. There just wasn't that much happening for either goaltender. And then 43 minutes into the game, so 3 minutes into the third period, Connor Clifton wakes everybody up, absolutely slamming Brandon Hagel into the boards. He was called for boarding, and he said he understood that call. He immediately gets in a fight with Anthony Cirelli. Clifton takes him to the ground. So that was certainly a very exciting moment in the game. And all of a sudden after that, it turned into a pretty wild contest. It still took quite a few more minutes for there to actually be a goal on the scoreboard. And fittingly, for sort of a wild, jumbled mess of a game, the goal was pretty much a jumbled mess too. Tampa Bay gets on the board first with about 6 minutes remaining, when it looked like Arturs Silovs had stopped the puck. It was just kind of sitting there in the crease, but he didn't have his glove fully on it. Both he and Dan Muse said they thought that a whistle probably should have been blown in that situation, or that it felt like there should be a whistle. There was not, and J.J. Moser was able to locate that loose puck and poke it through Silovs' legs for an opening goal. And that was just a really deflating moment at that point, because the Penguins were coming off of 2 losses over the weekend in which their goaltenders played really well, the defense played very well, and yet they lost. 2-1 to Calgary on Sunday, 1-0 in Boston. 2-1 to Calgary on Saturday, 1-0 in Boston on Sunday. And then you're having yet another defensive performance where you simply cannot buy a goal, and all of a sudden it looks like you're headed for your third straight regulation loss on a pretty stupid score. And it certainly did feel strange that there was not a whistle in that situation, although I'm not exactly sure why Silovs couldn't just fully get his glove on the puck either. But credit to the Penguins. They responded in a really, really big way, getting a goal with about 2 minutes remaining from Evgeny Malkin after Kris Letang, who had to play a bigger role because another example of me bearing the lead in this podcast, Erik Karlsson missed a game for the first time in his 2.5-year Penguin tenure. He's out at least 2 weeks with a lower body injury. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, the team said. So Kris Letang has to step up to be that top defenseman on the power play, to be that number one offensive defenseman. He was really good in this game, including in winning this puck battle along the boards, getting it to his longtime teammate in Malkin, who did the rest. And Malkin just continues to have an unbelievable season. And listen, if you were able to get a goal past Vasilevsky in this game, you were doing something right, because he was absolutely unreal for most of it. And I would say the Penguins certainly had better chances than Tampa Bay. Then it goes to overtime, and the Penguins had the better chances in overtime. They got 4 of the 5 shots registered in that 3-on-3 period. They look way better in 3-on-3 play than they did for most of the season, and yet it did not matter because Vasilevsky was able to stand in there, turn everything away, and once it got to a shootout, did not feel very good about the Penguins' chances to win. They're now 1-6. Silovs is 1-5. And he allowed goals on 2 of the Lightning's 3 attempts. So that puts him at a .313 save percentage in shootouts. That's the worst for the season. Excuse me. He saved 5 of 16 attempts. That's the worst percentage for any goalie who has more than 5 attempts against this season. Now, Dan Muse was asked afterwards a predictable question. He was asked, would you consider subbing out Arturs Silovs, who played wonderfully in this game, saved 30 shots, allowed just 1 goal to a team that's now won 11 games in a row? And he said no. And to be honest, I kind of understand it. He's like, it would put the other goalie in a tough position. It's very, very rare to do. And I can't really imagine what it's going to do to somebody's confidence to play so well for 65 minutes and then get pulled out in the decisive moment. I understand. Do I think it might be worth a shot given how much Silovs has struggled, even when he's playing well like he did in Tuesday's game? Yeah. But I understand why Dan Muse is not willing to do that. But then the Penguins scored on 1 of their 3 attempts. They continue to have trouble on the offensive side of shootouts as well. Igor Chinakhov sent a rocket, came in with a lot of speed and was able to find the back of the net. It hit the back of the net so hard that it bounced out like it had hit a post. Like, we didn't know if he'd scored. We thought the game was over because he had to score to extend it. And no, it actually had hit the back of the net so hard that it was a score, even though the bounce trajectories look so strange. And then Nikita Kucherov went ahead and sealed the Penguins' fate, scoring on Silovs. And the other 2 attempts for the Penguins, Rickard Rakell came in slowly. I generally like his shootout attempts. He's over 40% for his career. I think he should remain in the shootout lineup. But he came in with way too little speed, it seemed like. Tried to make a move that then left him with very little of the net to actually shoot at, and Vasilevsky was able to bat that away with a stick. And then Sidney Crosby, who we know he is the Penguins' best offensive player. We know that earlier in his career he was a shootout master. He didn't even get his attempt off, basically misfired trying a backhand move. And he's now 1 for 6 this season in shootouts and 2 for 13 for the last 2 seasons. I understand why it would be maybe too big an ask to pull Crosby out of the shootout lineup, but I do think it's fair to give other people a shot. I mean, Malkin's 1 for 2 this season. That means he hasn't been in the lineup every time. We're not worrying about whether that's too much of an ask for one of your veterans. Ben Kindle won the team's contest in Sweden. We know because he had to wear a Viking hat afterwards. Maybe he would be an option. So it just seems like whether it's taking the chance on pulling Silovs in a shootout or changing up that lineup a little bit. And like I said, I think Chinakhov and Rakell are pretty darn good options, but maybe even taking Crosby out of that lineup. Got to do something, because those are 6 points that you have bled in games like Tuesday where you generally played very well. And that is not going to look good come April amid a packed Eastern Conference standings. So that's going to do it for the Wednesday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. I'll be up at practice in Cranberry in a little bit. Got some other longer stuff I'm working on that I'm excited to share on post-gazette.com. So please subscribe and read everything there. We'll talk a little bit more about the impact of Erik Karlsson's injury and what it's going to mean for the defensemen in a later episode. But suffice to say on this one, the defense played really, really well without him. Jack St. Ivan, he played alongside Parker Wotherspoon. That was a good pair. Connor Clifton provided some energy at least, even if he got penalized for it alongside Ryan Shea. And Kris Letang stepped up in a way that I'm not sure he has all season. He was really, really good against the Lightning. And ultimately, getting a point against a team that good, you're not going to complain about. And now the Penguins have 3 out of 4 points against the Lightning this season. And we'll see if they're able to build off that momentum, however small it may be. In Thursday's game against the Flyers, this is a huge contest, folks. We know any game with the Flyers is big. Crosby's been held without a point the last 3 games. I would expect he's going to be raring to go against his rival. And this is a game that the Penguins really need to win to avoid going on the type of losing streak that derailed their December. So please like and subscribe wherever you're seeing this podcast. We'll be talking about that Flyers game on Friday. As always, we really appreciate your support, and I'm excited to be on the Penguins beat for the rest of the season, bringing you as much good content as I can. And, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on my email, which is, you can find that on Post-Gazette.com. If you have any questions, anything you want me to talk about on this platform, I want to serve y'all and do what you would like to see. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, Pittsburgh. And man, it certainly does feel like a new day in the Pittsburgh pro sports landscape.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.